Sometimes the most explosive moments happen in complete silence. Picture this: a glittering ballroom filled with Britain's elite, cameras flashing, champagne flowing, and then suddenly, a collective gasp that cuts through the elegant chatter like a knife. What could make hundreds of sophisticated guests stop mid-conversation and stare? What could make a future queen's face drain of color in an instant? And what could cause a king to notice something so shocking that it would change the very foundation of royal relationships forever? The answer lies in a single piece of jewelry, a necklace that should never have been worn by someone who had no right to wear it on a night that was supposed to celebrate unity, but instead exposed the deepest cracks in the royal facade. This is the story of how one accessory became a weapon, how a moment of defiance sparked a royal crisis, and how the consequences of that night would ripple through the monarchy for years to come. Some secrets are too big to stay hidden, and some betrayals are too bold to be ignored. What happened at the gala that night would prove that even in the most controlled, carefully orchestrated royal events, human nature, with all its jealousy, ambition, and reckless courage, still find a way to break through. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her vanity mirror, carefully considering her jewelry options for the evening's gala. The annual Royal Arts Foundation benefit was one of the most prestigious events on the royal calendar, and tonight would mark her first major public appearance since recovering from a recent surgery. The pressure to look perfect was immense, but Catherine had always handled such expectations with grace. Her lady-in-waiting, Sarah, carefully arranged several necklace options on the velvet-lined jewelry tray. Among them was the stunning sapphire and diamond necklace that had belonged to Princess Diana, a piece that held deep emotional significance and had become one of Catherine's signature accessories for formal occasions. The necklace caught the morning light beautifully, its deep blue sapphires seeming to dance alongside the brilliant diamonds that surrounded them. "Perhaps the sapphire piece tonight, Your Royal Highness?" Sarah suggested, knowing Catherine's fondness for wearing Diana's jewelry at important events. "It would complement your navy gown perfectly." Catherine nodded thoughtfully but then paused. "Actually, Sarah, I think I'd like to wear something different tonight. Something that feels more current." She gestured toward a more modern piece, an elegant diamond collar that sparkled with contemporary flair. "Let's save Diana's necklace for another occasion." Meanwhile, across London at Clarence House, Camilla was having her own preparations for the evening. As queen consort, she understood the weight of every public appearance, especially one as high-profile as tonight's gala. The event would be attended by celebrities, politicians, and members of high society, all eager to see the royal family in their full splendor. Her stylist, Miranda, had laid out several options for the evening's ensemble. Camilla's emerald green dress hung elegantly on its stand, and they were now deciding on accessories. The jewelry selection was impressive, pieces from the royal collection that spoke to centuries of tradition and power. "We need something that makes a statement," Camilla mused, running her fingers along the various necklaces. "Something that shows strength and confidence." Miranda nodded in agreement, understanding the unspoken dynamics at play. Ever since becoming queen consort, Camilla had been working to establish her own identity within the royal jewelry collection, often choosing pieces that hadn't been associated with previous royal women. It was a delicate balance between honoring tradition and carving out her own space. At Buckingham Palace, King Charles III was reviewing the evening's schedule with his private secretary. The gala was particularly important to him as it celebrated the arts, a cause he had championed for decades. He was pleased that both Catherine and Camilla would be attending, as their presence would generate significant media attention and, hopefully, donations for the foundation. "The photographers will be positioned at the entrance for arrival shots," his secretary informed him. "Both the Princess of Wales and Queen Consort will arrive separately, about 10 minutes apart, to ensure adequate photo opportunities." Charles nodded approvingly. He had learned long ago that royal events were as much about theater as they were about the actual cause being celebrated. Every detail mattered, from the order of arrival to the choice of clothing and jewelry. Back at Kensington Palace, Catherine was having second thoughts about her jewelry choice. As she looked at herself in the full-length mirror, the modern diamond collar felt somehow insufficient for such an important return to public duties. She turned to Sarah with a slight frown. "You know what? I think you were right about the sapphire necklace. It feels more appropriate for tonight's significance." Sarah smiled and moved toward the jewelry box, but when she opened it, her expression changed to one of confusion. The distinctive blue and diamond necklace was nowhere to be seen. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah said carefully, "the necklace isn't here. When did you last wear it?" Catherine felt a flutter of concern. The necklace was not only valuable, but irreplaceable due to its connection to William's mother. "I wore it to the state dinner last month. I'm certain I returned it to the box immediately afterward." They searched through all of Catherine's jewelry boxes systematically, but the necklace was simply gone. Sarah's face grew pale as she realized the implications. A piece of the royal jewelry collection was missing, and she was responsible for its safekeeping. "Perhaps it's being cleaned or repaired," Sarah suggested hopefully. "Let me contact the palace jeweler immediately." But when they reached the jeweler, he confirmed that he had not received any items from Catherine's collection for maintenance. The necklace had simply vanished. Catherine felt a chill run through her. While the monetary value was substantial, the emotional worth was immeasurable. This was the same necklace Diana had worn to numerous state functions, and Catherine had worn it on some of her most important occasions as a royal wife and mother. "We need to inform William immediately," Catherine said, trying to keep her voice steady. "And we'll need to contact palace security. Someone will need to review the visitor logs and security footage." As the morning progressed, discreet inquiries were made throughout the royal household staff. The missing necklace became a closely guarded secret, with only a few trusted individuals aware of the situation. They couldn't afford for news of the missing jewelry to leak to the press, especially on such an important day. William arrived at Kensington Palace during his lunch break, his face serious as Catherine explained the situation. As second in line to the throne, he understood the implications of missing crown jewelry better than most. It wasn't just about the necklace itself. It was about security, trust, and the integrity of the royal collection. "We'll find it," he assured Catherine, though his jaw was tight with concern. Someone must have made an honest mistake. Perhaps it was moved for cleaning or cataloging without proper communication. But as they made more calls and inquiries, it became clear that no one in the official royal household had any knowledge of the necklace's whereabouts. The head of palace security was briefed and promised to conduct a discreet investigation, but with the gala only hours away, there was little they could do immediately. Catherine was forced to accept that she would need to choose different jewelry for the evening. She selected an elegant diamond tiara and matching earrings that had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II, beautiful pieces that would certainly be appropriate for the occasion, though they lacked the personal significance of Diana's necklace. As evening approached, the palace buzzed with final preparations. Cars were arranged, guest lists were finalized, and security details were briefed. The missing necklace investigation would have to continue quietly in the background while the royal family maintained their public duties. In her final moments of preparation, Catherine looked at herself in the mirror one last time. She appeared every inch the future queen she was destined to become, elegant and poised despite the morning stress. But the absence of Diana's necklace felt like a small betrayal, a break in the connection she had felt to William's mother and the legacy she was meant to carry forward. "You look beautiful, darling," William said, appearing behind her in his formal evening wear. "Mother would be proud." Catherine smiled, though something still felt unsettled. Call it intuition or just the stress of the missing jewelry, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this evening would bring more than just the usual royal duties. Something was coming, though she couldn't imagine what. As their car pulled away from Kensington Palace toward the gala venue, Catherine had no way of knowing that her missing necklace was, at that very moment, being fastened around another woman's neck just a few miles away. She had no way of knowing that the evening she had hoped would mark her triumphant return to royal duties would instead become one of the most shocking and talked about moments in recent royal history. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the modern monarchy. The Royal Opera House. The evening's gala was already in full swing when the first royal car arrived. Photographers lined the red carpet, their cameras flashing in rapid succession as various celebrities and dignitaries made their entrances. The venue had been transformed into a glittering showcase of British elegance, with thousands of pounds worth of floral arrangements and dramatic lighting creating the perfect backdrop for London's social elite. Catherine and William's arrival was met with the expected fanfare. She moved gracefully along the red carpet, pausing for photographs and exchanging brief words with the waiting media. Her choice of Queen Elizabeth's diamond suite drew immediate approval from fashion commentators, who noted how the pieces seemed to embody both classic royal elegance and Catherine's own refined taste. Inside the opera house, guests mingled with champagne glasses in hand, discussing everything from the latest art acquisitions to political developments. Catherine found herself surrounded by familiar faces, patrons of the arts, fellow royals from European houses, and prominent cultural figures who had long supported the Foundation's work. "Your Royal Highness, how wonderful to see you back," gushed Lady Pemberton, one of the gala's main organizers. "You look absolutely radiant. The diamonds are spectacular." Catherine smiled graciously, though part of her mind was still occupied with thoughts of the missing necklace. She had decided not to let it ruin the evening, but the mystery continued to nag at her. Who could have taken it? And, more importantly, why? 20 minutes later, the atmosphere in the room shifted noticeably as security personnel discreetly took their positions near the entrance. The Queen Consort was about to arrive. Charles had already been present for nearly an hour, working the room with his characteristic enthusiasm for the arts, but all eyes now turned toward the entrance. Camilla's car pulled up to the red carpet, and she emerged with the confidence that had taken years to develop. Her emerald green gown flowed elegantly as she moved, and she carried herself with the bearing of a woman who had finally grown comfortable with her role as Queen Consort. But it was what adorned her neck that caused the first whispered gasps among those close enough to see clearly. The sapphire and diamond necklace caught the camera flashes brilliantly, its deep blue stones seeming to glow against Camilla's skin. To most observers, it was simply another stunning piece from the royal jewelry collection. But to those who knew the collection intimately, who understood the significance of each piece and its usual wearer, the sight was shocking. Inside the opera house, Catherine was engaged in conversation with the director of the National Gallery when she noticed a subtle change in the room's energy. Conversations seemed to pause momentarily, and she caught sight of several guests glancing in her direction with expressions she couldn't quite read. Some looked surprised, others uncomfortable, and a few seemed almost excited by some unspoken drama. "Excuse me," Catherine said politely to the gallery director, sensing something was amiss. She moved toward the center of the room, where she had a better view of the entrance. That's when she saw her. Camilla stood near the entrance, accepting greetings from various guests, and around her neck was Diana's necklace, Catherine's necklace. The same sapphire and diamond piece that had been missing from her jewelry box that morning now adorned the Queen Consort's throat. For a moment, Catherine felt as though time had stopped. The elegant chatter around her seemed to fade into a distant hum as she stared at the unmistakable necklace. There was no possibility of mistake. She knew every facet of those stones, every curve of the platinum setting. She had worn it dozens of times, had felt its weight against her collarbone at state dinners, charity events, and family celebrations. Sarah, who had been staying close to Catherine throughout the evening, noticed her sudden stillness and followed her gaze. When she spotted the necklace, her face went pale. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah whispered urgently, "should I?" But Catherine held up a subtle hand, indicating that Sarah should remain calm. Whatever was happening, it needed to be handled carefully. Creating a scene at such a public event would be disastrous for everyone involved. Catherine's mind raced as she tried to process the situation. How had Camilla come to possess the necklace? Was this some sort of misunderstanding? Perhaps someone from Camilla's staff had mistakenly collected it from the wrong jewelry collection? But even as she considered innocent explanations, a darker possibility crept into her thoughts. The necklace hadn't simply wandered off by mistake. Someone had deliberately taken it from her collection and given it to Camilla. The question was whether Camilla knew the true circumstances of how she had acquired it. Across the room, several other guests had also noticed the unusual sight. Lady Pemberton, who had complimented Catherine's choice of jewelry earlier, now looked confused and slightly distressed. She had seen Catherine's jewelry collection many times and knew that the sapphire necklace was one of her most treasured pieces. "Is that?" Lady Pemberton whispered to her companion, a prominent art collector who also moved in royal circles. "I believe so," he replied quietly. "How extraordinary." The whispered conversations began to spread subtly through the room. While most guests remained unaware of the significance, those with intimate knowledge of royal protocol and jewelry traditions were beginning to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. Catherine forced herself to maintain her composure as she continued to circulate through the room. She smiled appropriately, engaged in small talk, and gave no outward sign of her inner turmoil. But inside, she was struggling to understand not just how this had happened, but what it meant. The necklace had belonged to Diana, yes, but it was now part of Catherine's personal collection within the broader royal jewels. For Camilla to wear it without permission was more than just a social faux pas. It was a breach of royal protocol, and, more personally, felt like a violation of the trust and respect that Catherine thought existed between them. Meanwhile, Camilla seemed completely unaware of the stir she was causing. She moved through the crowd with confidence, accepting compliments on her appearance and discussing the evening's charitable cause with obvious enthusiasm. If she knew that the necklace should not have been in her possession, she gave no sign of it. King Charles, who had been thoroughly enjoying his conversations with various cultural luminaries, began to notice the unusual undercurrent in the room. As someone who had attended thousands of such events, he was sensitive to changes in atmosphere. Something was different tonight, though he couldn't immediately identify what it was. It was when he spotted Catherine across the room that he first noticed something amiss. Despite her polite smile and appropriate responses to those around her, he could see tension in her posture that hadn't been there earlier in the evening. Her jaw was slightly tight, and her eyes seemed to be searching the room for something or someone. Following her gaze, Charles's eyes eventually landed on Camilla, and that's when he saw it too. The sapphire necklace. Charles knew the royal jewelry collection better than almost anyone. He had seen that particular piece on Diana countless times during their marriage, and he had watched Catherine wear it with pride at numerous state functions since her marriage to William. It was not a piece that would typically be offered to the queen consort, particularly not without consultation with its usual wearer. For the first time that evening, Charles felt a flutter of concern. How had this situation arisen? More importantly, how could it be resolved without causing a scandal that would overshadow the charitable purpose of the evening? As the realization of what was happening slowly dawned on various members of the royal party and their inner circle, an invisible tension began to build throughout the elegant gathering. The evening that had been planned as a celebration of the arts was transforming into something far more dramatic. Catherine continued to maintain her gracious public facade, but inside she was making calculations. Should she approach Camilla directly? Should she speak to Charles? Should she simply endure the evening and address the matter privately later? The decision, however, would soon be taken out of her hands, because unbeknownst to Catherine, several guests had already begun taking discreet photographs with their phones, and at least one prominent society blogger was preparing to share the fascinating jewelry choice with her thousands of followers. The powder keg was set, and it would take only the smallest spark to ignite an explosion that would reverberate far beyond the walls of the Royal Opera House. The moment of truth came during the evening's formal presentations, when Catherine and Camilla found themselves standing side by side for the traditional royal family photograph. As they positioned themselves according to protocol, with Charles in the center and the two women flanking him, the proximity made the necklace situation impossible to ignore. Catherine could smell Camilla's perfume, could see the rise and fall of her breathing, and, most prominently, could see every gleaming facet of the stolen necklace resting against Camilla's throat. Up close, there was absolutely no mistaking it. This was Diana's necklace, her necklace, and somehow it had ended up around another woman's neck. "Lovely evening, isn't it?" Camilla said softly as the photographers prepared their equipment. Her tone was warm and seemingly genuine, giving no indication that she was aware of any impropriety. Catherine's response was carefully measured. "Yes, quite lovely. I particularly admire your choice of jewelry tonight. Very striking." For just a moment, Camilla's hand moved unconsciously to the necklace, her fingers brushing against the sapphires. "Thank you." It was a last-minute decision. Sometimes one finds the most unexpected treasures. The comment hit Catherine like a physical blow. Was Camilla subtly acknowledging that she knew exactly what she was wearing and where it had come from? Or was it simply an innocent remark about finding a beautiful piece in her collection? Charles, standing between them, seemed to sense the underlying tension. His eyes moved between the two women, and Catherine caught him glancing specifically at the necklace. She could see the calculation in his expression. He was clearly aware that something was wrong, but was trying to determine the best way to handle it. The photographers called for their attention, and all three fell into their practice poses. But as the cameras flashed, Catherine felt as though she was participating in some sort of elaborate charade. Here they were, presenting the image of royal unity and harmony, while underneath lay a betrayal that struck at the heart of family trust and royal protocol. After the photographs, as guests moved toward the dining room for the formal dinner, Catherine found herself walking alongside William. She had been waiting for a private moment with her husband, and, finally, saw her opportunity. "William," she said quietly, ensuring no one else could hear, "we need to talk. Privately." He looked at her with immediate concern. "What's wrong?" "The necklace. Diana's necklace. Camilla is wearing it." William's step faltered almost imperceptibly. He glanced around quickly to ensure they weren't being overheard, then guided Catherine toward a quiet alcove near the grand staircase. "Are you certain?" he asked, though his expression suggested he already believed her. "Completely certain. It's the same necklace that went missing from my collection this morning. Someone took it and gave it to her." William's face darkened as the implications became clear. This wasn't just about jewelry. It was about respect, about boundaries, and about the delicate balance of relationships within the royal family. His mother's jewelry held deep emotional significance for him, and seeing it appropriated without permission felt like a personal violation. "We need to handle this carefully," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "But this cannot stand. That necklace belongs to you, and everyone in our circle knows it." Meanwhile, across the room, Charles was having his own moment of realization about the gravity of the situation. He had noticed the increased whispers among certain guests, the discreet pointing and shocked expressions of those who understood royal jewelry protocols. What he had initially hoped might be some sort of misunderstanding was clearly becoming a much larger problem. Lady Pemberton approached him with obvious distress written across her features. "Your Majesty," she said quietly, "forgive me for bringing this to your attention, but there seems to be some confusion about the jewelry this evening. Several guests have mentioned—" "Yes," Charles interrupted gently, "I'm aware. Thank you for your discretion." But Charles knew that discretion could only last so long. In the age of social media and instant communication, news of unusual royal behavior spread quickly. He needed to address this situation before it spiraled beyond control. The dinner seating had been carefully arranged according to protocol, with Catherine positioned several seats away from Camilla. But during the first course, Catherine made a decision that would change the entire trajectory of the evening. She quietly excused herself from her assigned seat and approached Camilla's position at the head table. "Camilla," she said softly, maintaining her gracious smile for the benefit of any observers, "might I speak with you privately for a moment?" Camilla looked up with apparent surprise, but agreed readily. "Of course, my dear. Is everything all right?" They excused themselves from the dining room, citing the need for a brief conversation about tomorrow's schedule. Catherine led the way to a small private sitting room that she knew would be empty during the dinner service. Once they were alone, Catherine turned to face Camilla directly. The time for subtle hints and polite deflection had passed. "Camilla, I need to ask you about your necklace." "My necklace?" Camilla's hand moved instinctively to her throat, her fingers touching the sapphires. "Is there something wrong with it?" "That necklace belongs to me. It was in my private collection this morning, and this afternoon it had disappeared. Now I find you wearing it tonight." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Camilla's expression cycled through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and then something that might have been embarrassment or guilt. "Catherine, I had no idea," Camilla began slowly. "It was delivered to my room this afternoon with a note saying it was selected for tonight's event. I assumed it came from the General Royal Collection." "Delivered by whom?" Catherine's voice remained controlled, but there was steel underneath the politeness. "One of the staff members. A young woman I didn't recognize. She said it was specifically chosen to complement my gown." Catherine felt a chill of realization. Someone had deliberately orchestrated this situation. It wasn't a simple misunderstanding or mistake. Someone had stolen the necklace from her collection and purposefully given it to Camilla, probably knowing exactly what kind of reaction it would provoke. "Do you remember anything else about this staff member? What did she look like?" Camilla frowned, clearly trying to recall details. "Dark hair, quite young, very professional manner. She had the proper credentials and seemed to know exactly what she was doing. I never questioned her authority." As they talked, both women began to realize they had been manipulated by someone with access to both their schedules and their living quarters. Someone who understood royal protocols well enough to carry out this deception convincingly. "Camilla," Catherine said, her voice softer now that she understood Camilla might be as much a victim as herself. "That necklace has special significance. It belonged to Diana, and it's been part of my personal collection since my marriage. For me to see it on someone else without any explanation." "Oh my God," Camilla breathed, her face going pale. "Catherine, I'm so sorry. I had no idea of its significance to you. If I had known." But their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Charles entered, his expression grave. "Ladies, forgive the interruption, but we have a problem. Someone has posted photographs on social media showing both of you at tonight's event, with particular focus on your jewelry choices. The commentary is not favorable." He handed Catherine his phone, showing a tweet that had already been shared hundreds of times. The image showed both women at the earlier photo session, with arrows pointing to their respective necklaces, and commentary that read, "Royal jewelry drama at tonight's gala. Queen consort wearing Princess Catherine's signature Diana necklace. Intentional statement or major protocol breach." Catherine felt her stomach sink as she scrolled through the rapidly multiplying responses. Some commenters were expressing shock, others were speculating about family tensions, and a few were calling it a deliberate snub or power play. "This is exactly what we were trying to avoid," Charles said quietly. "The story is already spreading beyond our ability to control it." Camilla looked stricken. "Charles, I never meant for this to happen. Someone deceived me into wearing Catherine's necklace. I thought it was from the general collection." Charles studied both women carefully, his expression thoughtful. As someone who had navigated royal scandals for decades, he understood that how they handled the next few hours would determine whether this became a minor footnote or a major crisis for the monarchy. "We need to return to the dinner," he said finally. "But first, Camilla, I think you should remove the necklace. We can say you developed a headache and preferred simpler jewelry for comfort." But Catherine surprised them both with her response. "No," she said firmly. "If Camilla removes it now, it will only fuel more speculation about what happened." The damage is already done for tonight. She turned to Camilla with determination in her eyes. Wear it through the rest of the evening. We'll present a united front. But tomorrow, we need to find out exactly who orchestrated this and why. As the three of them prepared to return to the dining room, none of them realized that the evening's drama was far from over. The mysterious staff member who had delivered the necklace was still somewhere in the building, and she had more surprises in store for the royal family. The remainder of the gala passed in a haze of forced smiles and careful positioning. Catherine, Camilla, and Charles managed to maintain their royal composure, but those close to them could sense the underlying tension. The three of them moved through the evening's remaining events, speeches, presentations, and final photographs, like actors performing familiar roles while their minds raced with questions about what had really happened. By the time the royal cars departed from the opera house, the social media storm had intensified. #RoyalJewelryDrama was trending on multiple platforms, with royal watchers, fashion experts, and conspiracy theorists all weighing in with their interpretations of the evening's events. Some posts defended Camilla, suggesting it was an innocent mistake, while others speculated about deeper family tensions and deliberate provocations. The next morning brought emergency meetings at Buckingham Palace. Charles had called for an immediate investigation, assembling a small team of trusted staff members, including the head of royal security, the keeper of the privy purse, and senior household officials from both Kensington Palace and Clarence House. Catherine arrived at the palace with William, both of them having spent a sleepless night discussing the implications of what had happened. They had reviewed their household staff, trying to identify anyone who might have had both access and motive for such an elaborate deception. "We need to approach this systematically," said Detective Inspector Harrison, who had been called in to lead the investigation. "Let's start with the chain of custody. Lady Catherine, when did you last see the necklace?" Catherine recounted the previous day's events in detail, from her initial decision to wear the necklace, to discovering it missing, to seeing it on Camilla at the gala. Sarah, her lady-in-waiting, provided additional details about the search of Catherine's jewelry collection and the subsequent inquiries made throughout the morning. "And, Queen Consort, you said the necklace was delivered by an unknown staff member?" Camilla nodded, looking tired and distressed. She appeared completely legitimate. She had the right credentials, knew the proper protocols, and seemed to have official authority for what she was doing. "Can you describe her in more detail?" Young woman, perhaps late 20s, dark brown hair pulled back in a professional style. Average height, well-spoken with what sounded like an educated accent. She wore a standard palace uniform and carried herself with confidence. Detective Inspector Harrison made notes while Camilla spoke. "Did she give you a name?" She introduced herself as Emma Thompson from the Royal Collections Department. But when I try to verify this later, no one by that name works in that department. This revelation sent a chill through the room. Someone had used a false identity to gain access to Camilla and manipulate her into wearing the stolen necklace. This wasn't just a prank or misunderstanding. It was a sophisticated operation that required inside knowledge of palace protocols and security procedures. "We need to review all security footage from both Kensington Palace and Clarence House," Williams said firmly. Someone had to physically access Catherine's jewelry collection to steal the necklace, and then someone had to gain entry to Camilla's residence to deliver it. There should be evidence of both incidents. Over the next several hours, security teams began the painstaking process of reviewing hundreds of hours of surveillance footage. Meanwhile, staff members from both households were discreetly interviewed to identify anyone who might have seen suspicious activity or recognized the mysterious Emma Thompson. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mary Hutchinson, one of the senior housekeepers at Kensington Palace, approached Sarah with information she had initially thought irrelevant. "I've been thinking about yesterday morning," Mary said carefully. "There was someone I didn't recognize in the main corridor around 10 o'clock. She seemed to know where she was going, and she was dressed appropriately, so I didn't question her presence." "Can you describe her?" Mary's description matched exactly what Camilla had told them about the woman who delivered the necklace. Dark hair, professional appearance, confident manner. But Mary added one crucial detail. She was carrying a small velvet jewelry box, dark blue, the kind we use for the more valuable pieces. This placed the mysterious woman at Kensington Palace at precisely the time when Catherine's necklace went missing, and with the right kind of container to transport it safely. The security footage from that morning revealed even more disturbing information. The cameras captured the woman entering Kensington Palace through a service entrance, using what appeared to be valid employee credentials. She moved through the building with obvious familiarity, going directly to the residential wing where Catherine's apartments were located. Most shocking of all, the footage showed her leaving Catherine's jewelry room approximately 20 minutes later, clearly carrying a small box that matched Mary's description. How did she get credentials? Charles demanded when he was briefed on these findings. And how did she know where to find Catherine's jewelry collection? Detective Inspector Harrison's expression was grim. This required inside help, Your Majesty. Someone with legitimate access to palace systems had to provide her with credentials and information about the layout of Princess Catherine's private apartments. The investigation team realized they were dealing with something far more serious than a jewelry theft. This was a security breach that suggested corruption within the royal household itself. Someone trusted with access to the most private areas of the royal residences had betrayed that trust to facilitate what appeared to be a deliberate attempt to cause embarrassment and conflict between family members. As the day progressed, more pieces of the puzzle began to emerge. The fake Emma Thompson had been seen at Clarence House in the early afternoon, again using apparently legitimate credentials to gain access to Camilla's apartments. She had presented herself to Camilla's staff as a specialist from the Royal Collections Department, sent to ensure appropriate jewelry choices for the evening's gala. She knew exactly what to say, admitted James, Camilla's private secretary. She mentioned specific details about the gala, the color of the Queen Consort's dress, and even referenced previous jewelry choices that would complement the evening's theme. It never occurred to any of us to question her authority. But perhaps the most revealing discovery came when they traced the credentials used by the mysterious woman. The security codes belonged to Rebecca Mills, a junior assistant in the Royal Collections Department who had been on vacation in Scotland for the entire week. Rebecca's credentials were cloned, Detective Inspector Harrison explained. Someone with access to the palace security systems copied her codes and created duplicate access cards. This is an extremely sophisticated operation that required technical knowledge and inside access. When they contacted Rebecca Mills, she was horrified to learn that her identity had been stolen for such a purpose. But her interview revealed another crucial piece of information. About 3 weeks ago, I lost my wallet while shopping in London, Rebecca explained. It contained my palace ID card along with my other identification. I reported it immediately and was issued new credentials, but I suppose someone could have used the original card to copy my information. The investigation team now had a timeline and a method, but they still didn't have the identity of the person responsible. However, analysis of the security footage was beginning to reveal patterns that suggested this hadn't been a random crime of opportunity. "Look at this," said the lead security analyst, pointing to several frames of footage on his computer screen. "Our suspect moves through both palaces with remarkable confidence. She never hesitates about which corridor to take or which door to use. This level of familiarity suggests she's been in these buildings many times before." Williams studied the images carefully. She's not just familiar with the layout, she understands our security protocols. Notice how she positions herself to avoid the main surveillance cameras? She knows exactly where they're located and how to minimize her exposure. The realization was deeply troubling. They weren't dealing with an outside criminal who had somehow infiltrated the royal household. This was someone with legitimate connections to the royal family and their residences, someone who understood internal procedures and had ongoing access to sensitive information. As evening approached, the investigation team prepared to expand their inquiry to include current and former royal household staff who might have had the knowledge and access necessary to orchestrate such an elaborate deception. But they were about to discover that the jewelry theft was only the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous plot against the royal family. The mysterious woman who had stolen Catherine's necklace had additional plans that would soon put the entire royal household in jeopardy. Unknown to the investigators, she was already preparing for the next phase of her operation, one that would make the Gala incident seem like a minor inconvenience in comparison to what she had planned for the following week.